you have to have the big picture in mind and the guts to build towards it. And when I did that move, I was letting go of everything that I've just spoken about in order for me to start over. As soon as I gave it to my boss and closed my office door, it's like I've just made a mistake. I saw myself as someone who could just interact on the basis of why not. I have never been the smartest kid, but I've often been the bravest. And bravery will continuously be my biggest asset.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with the Dreamers. I am your host, Petronella Ninja, and as always, I am so excited to be the one who platforms these phenomenal stories of these amazing men and women who are moving and shaking things in their personal lives, in their community, and in the world. You know what we talk about on this platform? We talk about journeys. We celebrate the journeys of how people became who they became. As I always say, when you look at someone and they have made it, it's very difficult to imagine how you can be like them because they look so far away from you. You can't even relate to them. But when you hear their story and you hear how they started and you hear the path that they walked, then it becomes possible to you to realize that if they did it, then I can do it as well. It's easy for you to see yourself in their story when you hear their story. And that is why on this platform, we celebrate the journeys of the people that are doing phenomenal things. And our guest today is all the way in the USA. You know what I'm realizing? We're having a lot of guests from the USA, but you know what? I'm absolutely ready for it. If you know people in other continents that you want us to feature, please bring them on. We'll be happy to have them. Our guest today is the amazing Mr. Leslie Makwembere. He is an associate manager for strategic initiatives. He's going to tell us what that means. His profile is very impressive. He was in banking, left banking, started Hozi, Innovator, empowered more than 400 entrepreneurs, was part of the 2022 Mandela Washington Fellowship, left all that to go and study again. And today he is now the associate manager. I just butchered that profile. I say all this to say that we're going to have an interesting conversation today as we hear the story of how did this happen? How do we get into banking, out of banking, innovation, entrepreneurship, and how do we get to where we are today? So without further ado, Mr. Leslie, welcome to Conversations with the Dreamers. How are you today?
Well, I'm honored and humbled. I'm trying to process some of the praises that you were saying in that introductory remark. You used words like made it, walked the path, and I'm looking at myself. I'm like, made it. I walked the path. I believe I'm still walking the path, and I believe I'm still trying to build a picture that that I dream of myself. But thank you. It's always a good feeling to reflect, to have people also appreciate the journey you're walking and take time to reflect and have a discussion. And maybe as you reflect backwards, you can also be grateful and you can also be inspired to even keep pushing to reach higher heights, I would say. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's you being modest. I think the path that you've walked is very, very impressive. I don't know if you've seen my book. It's called From Gogurt Oxford, The Girl Who Dared to Dream. So I'm big on daring. I like people that dare life. I like people that look life in the face and be like, be damned, I'm going to do what I want to do. And I think for you, some of the career maneuvers and moves, the starting over again that you have done is nothing short of daring. So we want to hear more about that story today. So let's start this conversation by you actually introducing yourself, because I tried to do that, but I think I will be too excited sometimes and I might miss things. So before we go anywhere, who are you? Tell us in your own words, who are you at the moment now? What are you doing? And what's up with you?
Yeah, thank you. So maybe starting from the bio, currently I am an associate manager for strategic initiatives for a company called Hardie. We're a company that manufactures building material, and I work in strategy. My goal really is to try and find the best ways we can do that better than our competition, and find the best ways to win. So I imagine every day the thousand ways in which we can lose and try and make sure that we avoid that and keep our heads above the water against all the challenges that we're facing. This builds on backwards to what I've done in the past. Prior to that, I spent a year at the University of Notre where I was studying my second master's, which was in engineering, science, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. So it was basically, you see how long the abbreviation is in the name of the studies. It was everything. It was finance, it was technology, it was business. It was a lot of confusion fused in 1 year, to which I graduated. And that was like mirroring what I'm doing now, where I'm pretty much doing everything within the organization. There is no department that I don't interact with. And it aided into the person I am. And then going backwards from there, I was running a microfinance company in Zimbabwe, where we were lending, and this was building off the experience that I'd got from working for Agribank as first as a loan officer, then I became a business development officer. So I harvested all those lessons, and those lessons birthed the microfinance organization and was the Innovator. And was the Innovator's focus was largely to train young people, empower them with networks that can help them build businesses to make them self-sufficient and rise above the unemployment challenges that have ravaged our country from as far back as the early 2000s. So this is what I've been trying to solve with a group of 4 other people. I'm not the only person who is a co-founder to Hozi Innovator. There are 4 of us who have done amazing things all over the world. And I have been grateful to be a part of this story. So this really, all this that was going on made me qualify for the Mandela Washington Fellowship in 2022, where I first came to America to learn about business and leadership. And it was that interaction with the University of Notre that made me realize the amount of opportunities I could benefit from migrating over to the United States. And when I did that move, I was letting go of everything that I've just spoken about to break it in order for me to start over and reach forward towards what would be challenging. Not only cultural integration part, but even career integration and having to reimagine who I can become. If I look backwards, I've done so many things for many people, 400 people, for just to state those we can account for, whom we empowered through entrepreneurship. And this was more or less me giving back to the community I grew in and also other people around. So having done that, I just feel like I still need to push myself further, because I think I'm in a position where those people continuously look at me and say, this guy said something meaningful to me and trained me in something meaningful, but what can I do to encourage them? I think I still have to press on and building myself. So I guess this is the short summary of the person I am. If you have any other questions, I can further explain or go deeper on them.
Okay. I think this is probably me being too curious and too nosy, because you're probably going to talk about all this further down the conversation. But you just said something there that I want you to speak a little bit more about before we go further. You say that you made a decision to walk away from all that you had built for another challenge in a new country altogether, sort of like researching everything. What made you do that? Because I think the average person looks for comfort. The average person looks for that opportunity to tick a box. I have built an innovation company. I have secured a job. I have worked in Agribank. I've done that. So I am comfortable. So what made you walk away from that comfort, from all that to start again? How
that is a good question, and I think the best answer to that is I'm a ridiculous person. I just challenge myself. Yeah, that's what I can say. And if I were to look back, this is an interesting space, and many people can look at this. And I wasn't the brightest person in school. From primary school. I'll give you an example. I became vice head boy going into grade 7. without history of ever making it to the top 20 since grade one. Yeah, like academically, I was not there, but I was a prefect because, I was just someone who always, yeah, I mean, would show up and maybe teachers so that I can lead. And I became a prefect, I think, at grade five. And then going into grade seven, they wanted to select who would become the head boy. So they put a group of us in front of teachers, and we were supposed to say something that would make them choose who becomes the head boy. And, primary school kids, we are being asked, tell us something. And I remember some of my friends at that time were saying, oh, my favorite food is rice and chicken, things like that. And as I heard that, I was like, this is not what you'd say to become head boy. So even at that young age, I then gave them a true manifesto of what I would do as the school head boy. And there was no debate that this guy should be the head boy. The only barrier for me to be head boy was that some of the teachers were saying, we have not seen this guy in the top 20 in the academic space. How do we make him head boy? What is the justification? But what I said then was the first realization to me that whatever you want in life, you have to speak it out. You have to stand out for it. And even as I went forward from grade seven, I started to push myself further. I had many people that inspired me growing up, people that did so well academically. I remember as a young man at Form 2, I used to go and ask them questions. How do you make it like this? And by the time I got to Form 4, I was a brilliant student on the basis of me pushing myself and trying to mirror myself with great minds. And I did pretty well from what I thought I was intellectual. And I would later on go to A-level and later on go to university and continue to press myself. But I guess the awakening came from the time I was working for Agribank. And I started to have a network bigger than myself because the bank practically brings a lot of people before you. And, when you're handling accounts and you're seeing a lot of rich people and you're like, I'm giving all these guys all the financial advice to make smart decisions. I am going before credit committees and talking for them to make sure that they get the money they need. And those guys became my inspiration. They became my friends as a personal banker for them. But above wanting to be good at my job, for which I think I was, it was the inspiration of I can be better. So I started to use that knowledge to inspire others that were beneath me. Beneath is not a good word. That were within my circle. And trying to make sure that they get the same access to knowledge as the ones that I was having, right? You're having food at the king's table. Make sure that you take some to your brothers. That is our cultural central belief. And it was that drive that really inspired the birth of first it was called Pundutso literacy training, and then it became Hozi Innovator. And really it was the most inspiring journey. Everyone whom we met in all 4 provinces of the country inspired us more than we thought we were inspiring them. I met many people more talented than I was, but I was just brave enough to create a platform for them to interact. And just to make sure that I keep growing, I had to make sure that I come to the country that I think is the best at capitalism and learn how best to do it, and continuously challenge myself to keep on building what I think I'm building. That's why I continuously break things to inspire myself.
That's very interesting, Leslie. Thank you for that. Y'all had it for yourself. I had to ask. I really, really had to ask because it was intriguing to me. I think sometimes you just want a good job, you just want comfort, and then that's it. So to see someone break it all down and building something new is very, very inspiring. So I just had to ask. And so you were sort of hinting on some of the things that has happened on your journey when you're talking about your journey through primary school and high school. So I'm going to take you back now. Tell us how the story of this dreamer started. How was your childhood like? Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I was born in Chitungwiza. Yeah, Chitungwiza, Unit J. Yeah. I pretty much grew up with a love for sport. I was gifted in sports. I would learn about the sport today, and the next match I'll be the man of the match. Yeah. So I for the longest period, I thought that is the space I'm supposed to excel in. In fact, I was gifted in cricket.
Mm.
I had the fastest right bowling arm in Chitungwiza growing up,
Mm.
and ZC, Zimbabwe Cricket Union, used to do a lot of things to promote cricket development back in those days. And they'll take us to Hardie Sports Club from Friday all the way to Tuesday. And my father is a teacher, and he could not have any of this. So this coach of mine was called Coach Reggie, wanted to necessitate or rather facilitate a scholarship to Churchill for me to really focus on cricket. And my dad would have nothing of that to go about, because if I was missing school in primary school at that propensity, he was like, no, we're not going to have that. So yeah, they made me focus on academics more.
Mm.
And I let go of cricket. But I guess it was even at that young ages, I remember meeting Coach Rackerman. I remember meeting Henry Olonga, Andy Flower, and talking to those guys. As a young man, I saw myself sitting next to them and playing for Zimbabwe. So I've always, every platform that I've ever been exposed to,
Mhm.
I grew up looking at the highest authority and saying, I can be next to those guys.
Mm.
So at
Mhm.
first it was me imagining myself to be a cricketer, but when I went to high school, I went to Nyauni Adventist High School. I remember I was in Form 1 and there was this guy called Makwembere, I think he's in Germany now, would also be a good guest for you to speak to.
Okay.
Makwembere, when I was in Form 1,
Mhm.
would get all the prizes. You remember, like, prize giving day, they would speak Makwembere, and then he would come collect the mathematics prize, Makwembere, and he would come collect the science, every subject, and the parents would be walking back and forth. Like, it was dramatic, and I would look at that, I was like, wow, I think I can do that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I was not the most gifted academically, like I said. So
Mhm.
Form 1, that never happened. Form 2, that never happened. When the time I got to Form 4, I had such an experience. And I remember my parents coming for graduation, and I was looking at them and walking like I'm the king, getting all these prizes. So
Mhm.
it, I think it, this is how I got to understand life, that you have to have the big picture in mind, and then you have to have the guts to build towards it. And this is how this carried me through high school, and even in life. There are so many people that I've looked up to and tried to mirror my steps towards what they've done. And I believe I'm still trying to do that. So sorry, I spoke from primary school and then went all the way from the question.
It's okay. It's all right. It's all
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Okay,
So
no,
yeah,
that's
that's
fine. So you said, so should we then insinuate that when you were young, you wanted to be a sports person? So when did that dream, when did
yeah.
that
I
go?
mean, we could say that, but also I think
Mhm.
there's another angle as well, because I was also a member of the YMCA, Young Men Christian Association. And
Mm.
I was the youngest at that time. I was the only person in primary school interacting with more people that were maybe in senior high school and other that were like done with high school. But when I was as young as that and interacting with this group of young people, I also had the inspiration, because I think these guys had a media organization in the United States. And as I spoke my mind, as young as I was, I saw myself leading the YMCA. And these guys would look at me like, this kid is brave. Like, what is going on? So it was just me just trying to match up to whatever platform that I was given. Yeah.
There is a theme that keeps coming up, Leslie, when you're telling us your story, that you were very brave even as a young person. Where did that come from? Like, I can imagine a parent probably watching this thinking, how do I raise a brave child? Or someone who is watching this and thinking, I could use a little bit more bravery in my life. So, how did
Yeah.
you develop that?
I, it's interesting. I get my lessons from some of the strange spaces, but I grew up watching a lot of cartoons. Yeah, when there was what sitting, I mean, in
Mm.
Chitungwiza where I was going for school, and it's either you're going in the morning or in the afternoon. So I enjoyed the morning sessions because I would have time, and cartoons when I was growing up would start from 2 p.m. all the way
Mhm.
to like 5. And that
Mhm.
was like the best period for me to rush back home and start enjoying cartoons. And I don't know about cartoons these days, but cartoons those
Mhm.
days would talk about a story in which someone would be timid and they would grow into be courageous and they would become the hero. somehow. So I would always see myself.
Mm.
And you can imagine when we were being taken to like the cricket games, we'd meet all these kids from all these the best schools around that time, the St. George's, and I would be a simple kid from Shtungiza who learned his English through watching a lot of cartoons. But somehow I would somehow interact with these kids from House and things like that, and I never saw myself as the kid from Ludzai Primary School. I,
Mhm.
I I saw myself as someone who could just interact on the basis of why not? Yeah, the why not has paid up to date. Yeah,
Okay, everybody, the lesson from Leslie is if you want to be brave, watch a lot of cartoons. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
For sure.
no, thank you for that. And I think that the why not attitude is very, very powerful. I think I grew up in Goko as well, and I just, as I say, just did my way through life. So thank you
Mhm.
for that. Okay, so tell us then a little bit more about you finished high school and then your experiences with university. I think from your bio and
Yeah,
the companies and the things that you have set up, it feels like you're in the banking finance sector. So how
yeah,
did you
yeah.
get into that? So tell us a little bit more about your transition from high school to university.
Interesting story. So when I went into university, there's one thing that started to happen. I think we went into university when Zimbabwe was in crisis. Uh, this is not news. And you would be given pocket money by parents, and it would never be enough. So
Mm-hmm.
as a guy, you had to just make something for yourself. So I guess the entrepreneurial spirit started when I was in college. Because
Mm-hmm.
if anyone went to college with me, they would tell you in my final year, I was selling airtime. I had a printing business. I had a lending business. I had a typing business. I was doing everything for money, and I was rich as a college student. In fact, in my final year, I was not. I stopped eating in the campus dining. Every day, I used to go to because I was in Gweru, Midland State University. I used to go into Gweru Town, downtown, and always eat in those spaces where people with means were meeting. Simply because I was working very hard and making a lot of money from the college space. This entrepreneurial thinking maybe was attractive to Agribank when they interviewed me for the job because I first went into microfinance as a lender. And I was a credit officer, a loan officer in microfinance for 3 years, I think. 2 years. Yeah. And I did that pretty well. I got promoted to become a relationship officer, and I started to manage a loan book bigger than what I started working with. And just this business acumen kept on growing until I thought maybe it's time for me to do an MBA and keep on pushing myself. Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
did you study in university as your first degree then?
Yeah, my first degree was in agricultural economics. That
Mm.
was my first degree. And I remember my choice into doing that was never really upon research. In fact, I was given physics, applied physics as something I wanted to study. And then I remember just looking to the left and I saw this agricultural economics and I'm like, well, what do you do with this? Asking the lady that was recruiting. And she says, well, you can work in a bank. And I was like, oh yeah, let me do that. Because I always, I used to, growing up, I used to go to the bank with my mother. And I remember what used to fascinate me was whenever I would like be talking to the bank teller, there were moments where she would go to the back office. And I'll be like, what happens behind those scenes? Like, if I'm a bank, I want to know what happens behind. This is like my mind as a child. And
Mm.
maybe that was the reason why, as an adult, I'll be like, yeah, I want to see what happens behind those scenes.
Mm.
And fortunately, I went into banking and I got to understand what happens behind those scenes. And yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting. I think in Zim particularly, there's always this atmosphere when you get into a bank. So it's very demure, it's like the
Mm,
aircon,
yeah.
it's quite nice. So I can.
Bankers have a way of carrying themselves that if
Mm.
uh, if if someone who is less than 13 years old looks at them, they're like, okay, so this is the person giving my mother money. this guy must be rich. Yeah, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I carried that into my adulthood and it made me make that life decision, which I'm
Hmm.
grateful for.
Okay, that's very
Mm.
interesting, Leslie. Okay. I think one thing that we are seeing from your story is you have this way of finding inspiration from the interesting places.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
found
yeah,
your
yeah.
courage from cartoons, you found your job. Okay, so tell us then about you working for Agribank, you're managing the loan
Mm.
book, you're doing all that. How did you then transition into creating something of your own? What inspired you to do that? Because I think this
Yeah.
is we have different audiences for this show. So we have students that are looking to get scholarships. We have professionals that are
Mm.
looking to get into entrepreneurship. So someone is
Yeah.
watching us and they're in a particular job and they're thinking, I want to do
Mm.
this. How do I pivot? How do I, from the skills that I've gotten from my job, how
Thank
do
you.
I set something for myself? So how did you make that transition from working to building Hozi Innovator?
Oh, yeah. Just a few days ago, I was actually thinking, if I were to look back and say I did all this and it was methodical, I knew I would be here, I would be lying to you. But what I think I did uh, around that time was I realized the value of a network. Early on as a banker, I realized the power of a network. So I started to increase my network. And I remember what I did. I connected to the American embassy. By then, they were still working at Eastgate office.
Mhm.
So I went there and I asked them, what programs do you do here for people? Because I had realized they were doing a lot of community programs after following their page. And they told me, yeah, we do some youth trainings. Yeah, you can come here, learn about business. And I was like, oh, I can come here, learn about business. So there
Mhm.
was this lady, she was doing a talk. And as she was doing a talk, she mentioned how she had done the Mandela Washington Fellowship, I think in 2014.
Mhm.
And when she came back, she was empowered by microfinance institution and she grew a business. I don't know if I can mention names, but she she is a brand that makes peanut butter. Actually. And as
Mhm.
she was speaking, I'm like, do you know the way she's teaching the audience? I can also do this. I mean, based on my work right now. So I participated in that training. At the end of it, we were talking, and then I was like, who arranged this training here? And they pointed me to this guy. I mean, this guy is now my friend, actually. His name is Kenneth. They pointed me to Kenneth, and I reached out to Kenneth. I'm like, Kenneth, thank you for inviting me over to this workshop. I'm Leslie Makwembere, and I work for Agribank as a loans officer. And just attending this conference, I think I can also add value by training young people on business skills and things like that. It's like, oh, really? Would love you to do that. And I've never done that, by the way.
Mhm.
So I went back to the office and I'm like, guys, I now have an opportunity to do this, and I have no idea how to do it. So I reached out to Kenneth. I'm like, yeah, can you show me like the templates of what you use with? And Kenneth's like, I can help you build this training, just like that. So Kenneth helped me come up with the slides. And then Kenneth said, you need to convince this lady. There was a lady from the embassy and we had a meeting and I went there prepared as if I've done this a million times. And I spoke to her and she believed my story. And I told her everything that basically we've been talking about, even how I grew up and how I wanted to empower my community. And she said, yeah, would love to do this with you. And yeah, they said you can market the training and use our facilities to do trainings. I'm like, oh, really? So I started to network and spread the word that I can train people on business. I'm an expert. Yeah. I was just someone working. I didn't even know much about it. So
Mhm.
with those slides and the audience that we had marketed to, we did our first training,
Mhm.
which was a huge success. And it was a learning point for me. I got to know some of the things which I can improve and things like that. So that was the first training we did. And Kenneth became my mentor from there. And we did a number of trainings with Kenneth. Uh, by the time I left Zimbabwe, Kenneth had now connected me with Zimbabwe Youth Initiatives. And Zimbabwe Youth Initiatives has a network of over 20,000 young girls. And I
Wow.
designed a whole training curriculum for the young girls. And I'd trained girls in Blawayo like twice. And
Mhm.
this really started from, do you know I can contribute to this? So when I did the training with Kenneth, the traction of the training I'd done to then back my application for the Mandela Washington Fellowship in 2022. In fact, earlier on I applied and they said, Leslie, you're speaking of all these things, but you've done nothing. So I had to validate my words with actually doing trainings. So by the time I applied, they were asking me questions. If we give you this opportunity to do the Mandela Washington Fellowship, how will you better your community? And I would tell them this would improve the trainings we do together, So it was as if they're interviewing themselves because we were partners at that point. So I came for the fellowship. And during that fellowship, I met 4 amazing guys, the best people I've met in my life. And those 4 guys, we formed what is called the Hozi Innovator. And with the Hozi Innovator, we did amazing things. We got grants from the American government. With those grants, we were able to train the young people that I've been talking about. Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. I think there's probably one thing that I want to pull on that I need you to speak about a little bit more. You say that you realize that your time in banking had made you realize that relationships were important and you had to build communities and network. My question to you, Leslie, is how does someone actually network? I think words like network, build a community are thrown around together with words like find a mentor and do all that. I feel like people are just told network and then they don't really know how to approach it. I know a story that happened recently. One of people that are very close to me went to Zimbabwe and met this young man. They spoke less than a minute, just a quick hello. The young man asked for a business card, and then the next minute he was calling 9 missed calls, sending voice notes. I have an opportunity that can change your life. I have so it's like I'm thinking when I heard that story, I'm like, probably this young man actually thought that this is networking. I'm pitching an idea. Do you get it? So my question to you is, how do we actually tell young people to network? What does it mean to build a community? What does it mean to actually network?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Thank you. That is a good question. And I don't think that my answer is going to be the answer that everyone uses. I'm going to speak from my experience. And perhaps from my experience, people can draw lessons and maybe look at what is relatable to them. So I think there are 2 levels of relations. There's the horizontal relationship and then there's the vertical relationship. Okay. The horizontal relationship comes from the peer-to-peer type of relations. So when you look at people within your workspace, people within your academic space, who inspires you? Who inspires you? And whoever inspires you at that level, you can then reach out to them and say, I like the way you work those mathematical equations, those quadratic equations. How do you study? How do you understand things as they're explained by the teacher? And that is how I met my first friend in high school. And we started to study together and we would push each other. And in fact, one of the ways we used to inspire ourselves, I would ask him something that I know he hasn't studied. I would be like, so how long do you think the human intestines are? And he'll be like, I don't know. And then I wouldn't give him the answer. I'd be like, just like that. And it always inspired him to read more. And by the time we got to our final year, we were the best students in our space.
Okay.
So that is the first level of networking. Looking at from the people you interact on a day-to-day basis. Who stands out? How do you become like them? And it's uncomfortable. You have to reach out to them and tell them, I like the way you dress, Petronella. I like that blazer. It's colorful. It looks like the one that was spoken of as the coat of many colors. How do I dress like that? And you get that inspiration at that level. And then there's the next level, which is called the vertical relationship growth pattern. This is where you look at the next level of life. You may be in university and you're thinking, when I graduate, I want to be a banker. And you look at the person who's in banking and you be like, how did you get this job? Yeah, tell me the steps I need to take in order to get to where you are. There is a formula to things. There's a route they use. They will share with you and you try to mirror that. it may not work with the person A. Look at the other banker. Have a defined outcome in the next level and have defined nodes to connect to and try matching their rods. That's how you grow into the next level. So if you notice in life, the people that become stagnant on a level lack looking at the next level that challenges them in order to move forward. And if you do not move forward, unfortunately in life, you move lower. There's always movement. There's never stagnation. Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
I don't know if that answers. Sometimes people say I go a little bit philosophical than answering questions. Yeah.
I do love a good philosophical answer. I do love a bit philosophical pondering. But that's very helpful. I think it's one of the most explanatory answers I've heard of how to actually network. And I asked you in particular because I feel like there are words that we just throw around. When you're talking to young people, it's like find a mentor, network, but then we don't actually equip. I've heard someone text me, "Kama scholarship that's the best they can do in networking." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it was important for me to ask someone who has built.
Petronella, just to give you further context, I like to bring real life examples. I talked about how I reached to Kenya. That was a level of networking. Even when I was doing my applications for my master's program in the United States, there's a lady you interviewed here on this platform, Ene Mukrazita. She read my personal statements and she would add words that I'll be like, there is no way I could have thought of such a word that perfects my story. Like when anyone tells their story, there's someone who can read it and say it better than we can. So she was a friend of my mother. But I knew what she's capable of. I knew the network she has. I knew by reaching out to her, she would probably say something that could separate the doors that were closed before me. So she's within my network, and it is reaching out to her and getting value from her. And to be honest, I'm grateful for that. And there are many names I can point to. When I told you about the Hozi Innovator 4 guys, I'm grateful for having met those guys because I have leveraged on their skills to unlock certain doors in my life. And yeah, it pays to have a network, and it pays to be courageous to reach out to people because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to approach any person and say hi. Later on, how do I become like you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And yeah, Miss Annette is amazing. I absolutely loved my conversation with her. I think thank you, Leslie, for those insights. And to anyone that's listening to us, that's a very good formula. You can't you there is nothing new under the sun. There is for everything you want to do, there is someone out there who has done it. So have the humility to position yourself and to ask for help. So Leslie, you told us about Hozi Innovator and how it came about. So tell us a little bit more about the experience of entrepreneurship. Was it smooth sailing for you? Was it just da 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 perfect? How was that like? What are some of the things that a person who is looking to get into that entrepreneurship space or who is looking to build their own Hozi Innovator, what are some of the things they have to look out for?
Wow. Yeah, talking about entrepreneurship is a whole lot now. But I will ignore most of the endeavors that I've done. Remember, I mentioned from college, I started to do a lot of things. And maybe focus on how was the microfinance business born, because if I were to look at the many things I've done, that is the best, the highest level of business development and execution that I've done in my life. So when I came for the fellowship, there is a professor, his name is Professor Stephen. He gave us his life story, and he told us how basically this guy is a millionaire. He invented like a coffee machine. And he told us how he came about it. So as he told us this story, he said, I want you to write down your dream and what you want to do in your life and things like that. So I remember writing something down. And then he says, you are accountable to what you've written on that paper. And I'm like, if I am to live a happy life, because he basically told us his own journey and how it made him a millionaire and how he's enjoying that space. Yeah. So when he told us that story, I looked at myself and I looked at what I put on paper and I said, I'm going to try and live up to this story. So when I came back to Zimbabwe, this time I'd been promoted to go to Masvingo as like a regional business development officer for that province. And as I was in that province, nothing ever made sense. I loved my job, but I was in a space where what I'd written on that paper and the experience that I've met, because when I came for the fellowship, I met 25 different young people from 25 different countries that were dreamers like me, and we were on the same page, and we kept on talking, and we were each other's accountability partners. Would have monthly calls and ask each other, what have you done in line with those steps? And I told them, I'm still at work. I am sticking to my 9 to 5, and they would never look at me with shame. They'll be like, oh yeah, so the next question would be, so what are you doing in order to get to the next level? So the first thing that I did is I realized I had a company vehicle that I was using, grateful for what the bank did for me there, and I had my own personal vehicle. So I sold my vehicle. Then I'd start up capital. I kept that in a bank. But now I wrote slide decks of how I was going to execute this plan. And I was afraid if I do this, I will, yeah, I will lose all my money, and losing this car, because I'd saved a whole lot of number of years to buy this dream car that I was driving those days, which I will not mention by brand, but it was a dream car. And I was stuck with that money under the pillow, and stuck with the dream on paper, and stuck with friends that kept on asking me, what have you done? And trying to balance some of the lies and updates, which they would never match up. And then I would continuously ask myself, what am I doing? So I reached out to a friend, and we mapped out a strategy to extend the first group of loans. So we did that, and it started to be profitable. So 4 months into this idea, I then realized I'm a banker, but I'm also doing lending, and I could not do. There was a conflict of interest. So I wrote my resignation, and as soon as I gave it to my boss and closed my office door, I was like, I've just made a mistake. I wanted to explode on myself. I'm like, what am I thinking? Because by this time I had a company vehicle, I had a huge title, I had a company house, with like a whole drive-through in the suburbs of Masvingo. I was like, what have I done to myself? No, this is the highest mistake. So I had to serve like a 3-month notice, and during that time, I convinced myself that, when you've resigned, the organization starts to prepare life without you. So they start to, remove roles from you, and it's cycle. And I'm thinking, I am in trouble. Yeah. And all I have has been put in this. Yeah. And I'm like, Leslie, brave yourself. Remember those cartoons you used to watch? The hero will always emerge. So I came back to Harare and I talked to my parents. I'm like, okay, yes, I built a story like this, but guys, at my age, I'm going to have to live with you guys for a bit as I try and figure this out. But I think my parents had learned to trust me, because I'd done a number of things for them to believe, okay, he's capable. Yeah. So I started to walk that journey, and that value, because I think I sold my car cheap, actually. It was a forced sale. And I had to first recover the amount for its book value, like its actual value or resale value. So I did that successfully. And then I started to execute bit by bit, just the whole, I had been a banker for like 7 years. All the lessons that we were doing at Agribank, I started to focus them on my investment. Oh, I got good education from Agribank, and I focused all that education into my business. I don't think anyone in the microfinance space had any match for me, fused with the knowledge I got from the fellowship in business and leadership, fused with my MBA. this was not too much of a challenge. Practically, it was a mental challenge. So the results that were coming from the business, it convinced my thinking to this is what we are now doing. Eventually, I would grow my savings to to a very comfortable amount. In fact, within 2 years, I think. I think within a year of added the 4 experimental years I was doing with the Agribank, so it's practically maybe 18 months. I would find myself another trip to the United States to meet other entrepreneurs, and this was also at Notre Dame, and I ended up connecting with people from the University of Iowa. And guess what? We then had another partnership because Hozi was now formed, by the way, with the University of Iowa. And if I were to tell you some of the success stories, I'm also an accredited entrepreneurship trainer from the University of Iowa, and this is through the sacrifice that came from this initiative. And we started to train people, and they would get certification from the University of Iowa. So all those 400 youths I was talking about have a certificate from the University of Iowa in America. And we were focusing on maybe some of the most marginalized youths in our communities who maybe do not have a college degree or high school education, but they have a certificate from the University of Iowa. And this all came through the sacrifices. Yeah. So I guess I kind of gave you some of the processes that led to the business.
I think that ought to inspire somebody. I think that ought to inspire somebody. And I think it took a lot of strength and courage to be able to walk away from comfort. I think comfort usually is the best and the worst of us, because when we get there, usually we don't want to walk away from that. But you did.
Sure.
And thank you for sharing that. And even after doing that, you broke it all down and went to the US. So tell us, how has been life in the US been like for you? And what's next? What are the new thing? Are we waiting for you to unleash on the world?
It's an interesting space, and I just know I'll meet inspiration along the way, because there's a friend of mine. He's from Senegal. His name is Tidiane. And Tidiane, when we were in 2022, when we were friends walking, he would always be having headphones. So one day I asked him, Tidiane, what are you listening to? And Tidiane told me, I'm listening to a podcast. And I'm like, by that time, I thought podcasts were only for people with iPhones. I had an Android phone. So no, he said, no, I also use an Android phone. And he introduced me to channels. And I used to listen to a lot of business entrepreneurs, things like that. So it's those stories that I even keep listening to today that give me the strength to say I'm going to build on this. But coming back to your question, how has life been in the United States? I think it has been an inspiring journey, a challenge on its own, because imagine after a career of 7 years, after a successful period of being an entrepreneur, I then had to stop all that and say, I'm going back to class and listen to instructions. So I remember receiving some emails like, you need to attend this. This is compulsory. I was like, compulsory? I was no longer used to such words. But yeah, I had to walk that path, and it has been the most enriching journey because I have met amazing people. And my network right now is bigger, wider, richer. And it continues to inspire me. I continue to challenge myself. And if you were to ask me what is coming is I am becoming. I am becoming something that I myself will be inspired by.
Leslie, thank you so much. I think we're coming to the end of our conversation, and this is where I always say that I give everyone an opportunity to be a motivational speaker for the next few minutes. So looking at everything you have done, the the things you've built, the things you've taken down, the things you've rebuilt, the paths you've walked, reworked, and all of that. What lessons have you learned, and what would you leave with us today? I know you were giving us hints and tips and lessons along the way, but this is an opportunity for you to say, my parting shots to the dreamers watching us are this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I will tell you this. I'm a Christian, 100%. And there's a part of the Bible from the book of Ecclesiastes that says, I have seen underneath the sun that the race is not always for the fastest, nor the battle for the strongest, nor food for the wise. I mean, he goes on to say a bunch of things related to that. And I will tell you, opportunities are never for the smartest. They are never for the smartest. They are never for the most gifted. They belong to the bravest, the most courageous. I didn't tell you this, but part of the reason why I got that scholarship is when I came in that 2020. I applied first end of 2022 to come back to the United States, and I was not successful. And I said, the only way I'll be successful is if I pay a plane ticket with my money and go and knock at the university doors and talk to the professors that I want to be in this program and attend a lecture for the program I wanted to do. So I attended a class and sat in that class. And after class, I went to the professor and said, yeah, I came all the way from Zimbabwe to see if this is compatible with what I want to build. So I'm applying. So that is daring. And that is also putting resources, because I think I spend a lot of money to do that. But it is what it takes to be brave, to get what you want. Even growing up, some of the most beautiful girls in high school would date the guy who was bravest to say something. So you just have to talk to yourself and say, this bull, I will grab it by the horns, and I will be the name that people will celebrate. And trust me, I have never been the smartest kid, but I've often been the bravest. I have been brave on so many levels, and bravery gave me the title that I now embrace. And bravery will continuously be my biggest asset. And some of this bravery comes from not the depth of knowledge, but the depth of why not? And why not it will always be. So that is my short motivation, if it is.
Thank you so much. You guys heard it from Leslie, and I am co-signing everything that you have said. I think I always say that you get out of life what you contend for. You get out of life what you think you deserve and what you're willing to fight for. So I think it's just looking at yourself, and believing that you are worthy of opportunities and worth something in this world. And Leslie, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for coming on today, for having this conversation with us. We have learned so much, and I'm sure the dreamers watching us will appreciate also having heard your story and all the amazing things you've done.
And I want to thank you as well for inviting me to this platform. You have a proclivity of inspiring young people from your first book to the book you are currently writing. May you continue to walk that path. And trust me, there are some of us who are in the background cheering you on because we want to see you rise so that we can also inspire to get to your level and continuously shine in this world. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie. I really am passionate about stories. I really am passionate about personal development. And I really am passionate about seeing people be the best that they can be. So I think if I can give people an opportunity to see people like you, who they can aspire to be, when they look at you and they think, this guy with all he has done, I think If they can see that, if they can see that, then they can believe. So thank you for the kind words. Thank you for coming today. And everybody else, thank you for watching. As always, please subscribe and hit the notification button so that each time a new episode goes live, you'll be the first to know. Tell somebody to tell somebody. And don't forget to subscribe. Till next time.